G'day. This episode's a little bit different from previous ones because I've had some electrical work done on the house and I still haven't got full power back in the shed here, so it's a little bit dark. I've got as many auxiliary lights on as I can, but you know, sometimes these things happen, so we'll just have to persist and see how we go. Anyway, in today's video, I've done a bit more of this. So previously I've made the base and I've made the top slide, and in this video I make up the nut and the handle and fit all that up. So I've now got a locking top slide. I'm not sure what I'll end up doing next. I've got a whole bunch of small parts that I'm making. I've got some larger brackets that I have to make up. It's a little bit of a dog's breakfast at the moment. It's all over the place just because you know, I make these parts when I can, but we're making some progress here, I think. So anyway, this is this bit. In the collection of parts that have got to be made up is this locking handle. Now, it's a little bit unusual. The drawing calls up, where are we? This one down here. The drawing calls up a piece of flat, 4.5 thick by, that's actually 12 wide. Just make a note of that because it's not on the drawing here. But it's got an M6 thread on the end. And looking at this one, it looks like what my uncle's done is he's built that up with a little bit of weld. So I just happened to find a bit of material the right size. In fact, I may have actually been given this by him, just in a batch of material he wanted to get rid of. So I am going to do the only thing that I can think of, which is build that up with weld and then neaten it up, cut a thread on it. Now, I guess you could do this without putting the weld on, but trying to get a die to start on a bit of flat like that could be tricky. Even single point cutting, I think you'd find you'd have a lot of chatter. So easier just to build this up a little bit and then machine it back to round. I've built it up with some weld. Now I need to center that up in the forejaw and then carefully turn that, because it's going to be an interrupted cut, to give me a round 6mm spigot on the end there, which I can then thread as I have this one. After that crash, which was caused I think by too much depth of cut plus too much stick out, I wasn't quite sure how well this part would recover, but I took it out and a bit of judicious hammering. I've got that down to 6mm. So I'll now put a die over the top of that, put a thread on, and then take it over to the mill to get rid of some of the corners and all the rest of it. But I'd say lucky recovery, that one. Here's my flat handle. I wasn't quite sure how salvageable it'll be after that crash, but I managed to knock it back straight, finish the cut. I was lucky I had a little bit more to go, and threaded it, taken the sides down as per the drawing, and so it's ready to weld onto the boss, I guess. But it certainly you know, looks straight, so can't complain about that. On this one I've put a bevel here and a bevel here so I can get a bit of penetration in there without having to worry about grinding that back. Put a small step in there just to, once again, to help hold and align things. And so that should be that for that. So for these two, the next step is welding, and then I'll have the handles minus the holes ready to go. Some of you may remember this part. It was the first part I made up, and it's basically a welded structure with a slide that goes at the top. Now these two get held together with there's a slot in the bottom piece and a T-nut, and that's what this handle is for. Now this is one of those things that I've noticed on the drawing. That slot is 8mm wide. Sorry, that raised portion is 8mm wide, and that thread is an M8, which means that it's going to be breaking out of the sides there. I don't like that myself, and so I'm going to make that, instead of 8, I'm going to make that 10, which means of course I need to make the slot that goes into the base piece wider, and that's all right. Now another thing to think about too is that this is very stiff, but this is basically held in place by these two strips down the side. So I don't actually need to have this T-slot being, you know, absolutely size for size on the nut that goes in there. I don't need this hole to be, I mean it's an 8mm hole, but I don't need it to be 8. It could be 8.2, 8.5 even, quite happily, because the locating is being done with these slides. And this is one of the reasons that I didn't want to put the drawings out there straight away, because there are things here which don't have to be as a toolmaker would make them. I'm certainly not a toolmaker, and so I do things a little bit differently. Whereas a toolmaker will come along and he'll do things like this and he'll tune it, right? And so it wouldn't surprise me if I looked carefully at the one that my uncle made. I'd find these things have actually been tuned so that they just fit quite nicely. Okay, so yeah, next thing here is I've got over in the vise there, I've got the blank for the T-nut. I've drilled the hole already for the M8 hole. I'm going to put a step on there, so that's I'll probably make it something like 9.8, so that I've got a little bit of room to slide in a 10mm slot. I can use a 10mm slot drill for that, and then I'll bore this handle out to fit on the screw that goes on there. I've just finished the slot here. I did my usual thing of chain drilling it and then using a smaller cutter to come along and enlarge it, smooth out the sides, and always conventional milling rather than climb, just to keep things under control. There's my nut. It fits in there quite neatly, and that's good. It's a strange thing that the closer the fit between a sliding element like this and the hole, the smoother it'll be. I may have to knock some corners off there just to give myself a little bit of a lead in so it doesn't dig, but that's good. I'm now going to get the plate that goes on top and take that hole out to probably 8.5, and that'll mean that if this slot is slightly out of line, the hole in the plate will accommodate that. But apart from that, that's worked well. When doing this, make sure you've got things clamped down really firmly, because milling up this high does tend to shake around and vibrate a bit. But other than that, it's a reasonably straightforward job. And if you have to file it, similarly, you know, chain drill and open the slot out. The last piece of the clamping mechanism is to attach the bolt to this handle. Now, what I'm going to do here is counterbore this to that depth, so I've got a little bit of clearance there, and to that diameter, and then put a grub screw in there, and that'll hold that in, so it means I can tighten this up, and then when I work out where it needs to be, I can then put this handle on, nip up the grub screw, and I'll have that basically locked in place. I'm keen to see how this works too, so let's try putting it together. There's the nut, and that slides underneath there, and those two holes either side are great help in positioning that. There's the slide. I've adjusted the strips up so they're just a nice snug fit. That's an M8 screw. The drawing calls up a special screw, but an M8 socket head cap screw does just as well. What I have done though is, you just see there, I've ground a small flat on the side, and the way you do that is you nip that up to where you want it, and then work out where the grub screw needs to be with the handle. The handles I've got on order from eBay, but they haven't arrived yet. Put that in place, tighten up the grub screw in the handle, and there it is, that's locked up, and there it is moving. So that works really well. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you for the next one.